Let's discuss whether or not my January reads lived up to my expectations. Hola mi gente, MsMalcolmHughes here. Welcome back. Today we are going to discuss all of my January reads. Were they good? Were they disappointing? Did I finish all of them? But before we do that, let's talk about my t-shirt. So you know how I always say books are sometimes better than people? That's my tagline. I have it now on a t-shirt. Let's look at the back. Y'all see the MsMalcolmHughes logo. I'm so in love with this shirt and the colors. Let me know what y'all think about it. I'm thinking about making it for sale. I'm not sure yet, but let me know. But now back to what we're discussing. Let's get into the books that I read in January. I read 5 in total, and we're going to discuss all of them today. For the ones that have their own separate book reviews, they will get less time, but we will spend some time on all of them. So the first book we have is Rage by Stephen King, also known as Richard Bachman during that time. Richard Bachman was an alias that he used because he was putting out so many books during a certain period that the publishing industry or his agents and the publishing house were afraid to put out all the books at that time because they worried that they would flood the market. They just felt like it would be oversaturation. So they weren't willing to publish all of the books that he was writing. He was writing at such a prolific rate. And so he came up with a pseudonym in order to still put out books. And one of them was Rage. And Rage is a story that deals with a young guy named Charlie. He is a senior in high school who decides that he is frustrated with what's happening. What we uncover in the book is that a lot of trauma from his background has impacted him. But he goes to school, and unfortunately, what's written here is something that we are very familiar with in the US, in the sense that he goes to school, he unalives a couple of teachers, he takes the entire class hostage, and throughout that time of having them hostage, we definitely see some Lord of the Flies-esque elements happening in the sense that these kids are attempting to govern themselves. Charlie is in charge, kind of. He's in charge because he has a gun, but there's a lot of like built up tension that seems to unravel throughout the time and hours captured in this class. And so that's what the story is generally about. Did I enjoy it? Honestly, more than I thought I would. I'm not a huge Stephen King fan. I don't think I've read any of his books in totality before. I think I've read maybe excerpts in the past, but I don't think before this I had really read any of his books. And I still don't feel like I have because I did listen to this one on audio. But this made me want to pick up Stephen King's works and really give it the read that it deserves. And so what I liked about this book, I like the communal and sometimes amusing style of writing. I laughed often by Stephen King's use of language, often vulgar language that just was very surprising. And so that was entertaining because I, for some reason, was always caught off guard when it would occur. Also, it was a little antiquated in some of the words that were used. We would not use them today. So that also sets this book in a certain period of time. We learned very early that our protagonist is an unreliable protagonist. He's paranoid, obsessive, and definitely just someone we cannot trust. His full view of what is going on, and I like that framework and foundation is laid very early because it really does set up the rest of the time we have with this character in the book. Also, I like the background that we got on Charlie. You know, he would have reflections on his life throughout this time, and we'd really learn more context. Charlie was very abrasive. He was very anti-psychology when it was obvious that he needed one. And so we just got a lot of his internal thoughts, which I appreciated because that kind of helped to make the story believable, what is occurring. What did I dislike about it? Even though I enjoyed the flashbacks that he would have, sometimes they would seem to come out of nowhere and they didn't always feel natural and seamless, but I do feel like they added context. If not to Charlie, then also to his classmates with the decisions that they were making and what was happening in general. Overall, I felt like Stephen King did a good job of putting us in the brain of a young teenager. It was often disturbing, and I think that's what it was intended to be. It really, I like to separate art from the writer, especially with books, but sometimes obviously we cannot always do that. And this was one of those cases. I was like, yo, Stephen King, the thoughts that go through his mind, that's a wild imagination up there, because sheesh. But I also, as someone who also writes, I understand that we have to go to these places in order to bring authenticity to these characters. And I think he did a good job with Charlie, and also just with the frustrations between what's happening in the class. I can say that it wasn't always clear why Charlie had such a beef with Ted. Other than that, like, Ted was the alpha in the room, and maybe he intimidated Charlie, and Charlie wanted to be more like him, so Charlie felt the need to break him. But it was just a lot. I walked away from this book feeling like it was a lot, but I can't say that I didn't enjoy it. Like I said, I definitely foresee myself reading more books by Stephen King. Actually adding that into rotation and giving that the read that I feel like his writing deserves. Obviously, he has a massive fan base, so like no one needs me to convince them to read Stephen King's works. And because you don't need me to convince you to read his work, so definitely check it out. And like I said, I'm going to read more. And I think that is a compliment to any writer that you want to continue to delve into their catalog. So on a scale of read now, read when you want, or read when you have time, I would say that Rage is a read when you have time. Read it when you have time. I cannot say it's a read now, but it was an interesting read, so definitely check it out. All right, the next book that I want to discuss is The Other Black Girl by Zakiya Harris, and I did a full review of this book. You can go check that out. I won't spend much time on it. I will say that I am currently watching the TV series, so there will be a book versus TV series adaptation coming to the channel soon, a video review of that. But overall, I thought the book was cool. Nella pissed me off thoroughly. I thought that for the most part, as a thriller, it was okay. I thought that for the larger political stance that she was trying to take, or at least the cultural one, I feel like she missed the mark. And I just had a number of frustrations, but I did also have some pros for this work, so it wasn't all bad. I would be willing to give Zakiya Harris another chance with a book. So she's not like an author that I would write off. I did find the storyline compelling. I thought that it was borderline genius. But in the end, it didn't live up to the potential that I thought the plot had. And if you want to know more about my thoughts of that, again, check out the full review up on the channel. Next up, a book that I want to discuss is Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. And this book was really an interesting one. And I say interesting in the sense that I didn't really know what to expect going into the book, but I found that it quite captivating. And I say captivating because the book really has an author who is having a conversation with the devil and trying to determine, how do you manipulate people? How do you get them to work against their best interest, and what are the techniques that you use for this? And so we legit have a conversation between this investigator and the devil of like, why do you do these things? How do you convince people to do these things? And I found the ideas and concepts to be relatable. Though I didn't agree with everything, I did find that, fear is used to manipulate people. Money is used to control people and get them to work against their own desires. And it was just a number of strategies that you could definitely see working out in real life and the full implications therein. As someone who does work in the field of education, I found the concept of what schools are teaching, what they're not teaching, how religious institutions play into getting people to not think for themselves and not question as much. I found all of this to be very interesting. And so it definitely is something that I found gave me like pause. It's one of those books that really lets you reflect and say, I can see the implications therein, even if I don't agree with every strategy, or even if I don't agree with the conclusion, or even if the writer has a very Eurocentric idea of success. So definitely intriguing. Based on my scale of read now, read when you have time, or read if you want, I would say that this one is a read it when you have time. I didn't hate it. Again, I found it interesting. Definitely caused moments of reflection and pondering. So if you're someone who really likes the idea of a philosophical debate in text form, or even audio, because that's how I listen to this one, definitely check it out. And again, the audiobooks that I listen to are all available on YouTube, so you can check them out for free. The next book I have is The Blood Trials by Annie Davenport. Of course, this was a reread in order to prep for the second book in the duology, the final book in that series. And y'all know that I really enjoyed that book the first time. I enjoyed it the second time. Akenna is my girl. I rock with her, even though she's not always right. There are also other hosts of characters who I appreciate and enjoy. I also really liked the storyline. I found the grief believable. I really liked the idea of retribution and what Akenna is trying to do, but also that revenge isn't linear, right? Trying to do the right thing with limited information and a lack of trust will get you in trouble every time. And so we see the problems that Akenna comes up against. And so this is one that I'm really interested in seeing where the duology will take us. I'm so excited to delve into that more. And I appreciate this work for sure. So if you want to know more about my thoughts on this book, there are 2 videos you can watch. One, I have my original review from a few years ago, so you can check that out. But I also most recently released a character analysis of the characters in the book, so you can also check that out on the channel for more of my thoughts on this book. And last but not least, the final book that I read in January is Keeping Pepper by Scott Brody. This was also another text that I enjoyed more than I thought that I would. We have a couple of friends who rescued their friend Pepper from an institution where his wife has kind of left him. He's suffering from dementia and he's just not in a good state. And so they come up with this idea of like, hey, what we're going to do is take Pepper out on this last great adventure, this last hoorah, as they drive cross country. And we get to follow all of the adventures that Pepper has, and he has a lot. I don't always agree with the decisions that his friends make. I think they're entirely too trusting of folks with Pepper, considering he has dementia. I'm like, are y'all really looking out for him? But I did enjoy it. I enjoyed the storyline. I enjoyed the plot. There were some typos that like should have been caught in editing, so I do feel like this could have done with another round of edits. But generally speaking, I enjoyed it more than I thought it would. There was also like a whodunit mystery element to it. There's like a obsession element to it where Pepper goes through yet another traumatic moment. But overall, I thought that the book was solid and I enjoyed it. I don't know that I would like rush to pick up another work of the authors. I don't know if I was that invested, but I did find myself like surprisingly intrigued. So for this one, on my scale of read now, when you read when you have time or read it if you want, I would say this is like a read if you want, or read if you have time. Again, didn't hate it, but not my favorite read of the month by far at all. So definitely check it out if it sounds like that's something that's interesting to you. Definitely would not recommend it, but it was a solid read. Those are all of the books that I read this month. In general, I would say that I had a pretty solid January reading month. I wasn't like blown away by anything that I read, but I wasn't significantly disappointed either. I think that it was cool. I have some very good reads that I'm excited about for February. So definitely check that out. That video will be coming soon. But that is it for me. As always, I am MsMalcolmHughes, one who believes that books are sometimes better than people. And until the next one, please remember to give time, to be kind to each other, and to have the very best day of your life on purpose. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share. And I will catch you all in the next one. Peace. O dabo. Adios. Ciao.